My name is Kiara Karajanis, and today I'm going to be interviewing my aunt, Dina.
Okay.
Have you ever voted and why?
I have voted in every election since I was old enough, and I vote because I think that it's important that people say what it is they want and need from their governments, because governments should work for them. It shocks me that there are people that don't vote. It is so easy to do, and it's so important for politicians to understand what people want them to be doing. So that's why I think it's important.
Yeah, voting is definitely important. In one of my courses, it specified that if you don't vote, then you shouldn't complain.
Well, then I believe that. I'm surprised so many people don't vote. It's shocking to me, especially in California. You can literally vote in your living room and put it in the mail. That's the easiest thing ever.
Yeah, especially for the presidential ones, they're probably fun to vote on.
Yes, this next one's going to be crazy.
Yeah. You ready for question 2?
Sure.
Alright, question 2. Would you rather live in a capitalist or socialist society?
A socialist society, as I believe that socialism focuses on things that are important to whole groups in society, like, healthcare or education. Whereas to me, capitalism represents that only business people get to make all the money and all the decisions.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Definitely, socialist, my home has, better intentions when it comes to supporting its community.
Oh, I like the way you said that. Better intentions. I agree with that. That's a really well said.
Thank you. Yeah. Alright, question 3. What is your position on taxation?
I mean, I don't see any way that a government could run without taxation, right? Somebody's got to pay for schools and roads and police force and traffic lights. So I agree with taxation, but I don't always agree with the way that my taxes are used, if that makes sense. So as a concept, I agree, you have to have taxation, but I'm very disappointed that my taxes go towards, what is it, like an almost $900 billion a defense budget. That I don't agree with.
Yeah, that's a lot of money to go towards one thing when they could put it more into, what is it? Like programs to help other people instead.
Yes, can you imagine that kind of money if it went towards social services?
Did you know that literally just a campaign, I think they spent like 500 million something just in the 2016 election advertising them?
Oh, no, see, yes, I don't. That's so frustrating to me, because it also means that you're only going to run and win if there's money willing to back you, right? So it makes a presidential campaign all about who's willing to pay for it.
Then that just puts the wealthiest people on the highest pedestal.
Yep, absolutely.
Alright, number 4 is what is more important, the rights of an individual or the good of a society?
I like this one because in most ways I think they're the same thing. I think that when I think about what are the rights of an individual, I think that everyone has the right to affordable health care, right? The right to be healthy, the right to expect that the air they breathe is healthy. So in those ways, those are individual rights, but they benefit the whole society, if that makes sense. On the other hand, the individual right to own a gun, no, that doesn't benefit society. So in that, so I guess it depends. Overall, I would say what benefits the society is the best. But I also think that in many ways, they don't have to be separate. That you can have a strong, great society by also supporting the rights of the individual.
Yeah, that's very well said. Definitely, it's good to support the rights of an individual while still supporting the rights of the society as a whole. Because if your society's falling apart, then it's not as great as one person being happy about it.
Yeah, they got their guns. They're super stoked they got to keep their guns.
Yeah. All right, number 5 is, do you believe the powers of Congress and the president are limited?
Yes, because I think that the way our government was set up with the 3 branches, that the checks and balances keep each branch to its own specific zone or limit, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've seen a lot of times in history where they have used the check and balance system to stop catastrophic events. I don't know any off the top of my head, but I do remember learning about them.
Oh, that's awesome.
Number 6 is, how much freedom is there in the government today? Is it more free than the Founding Fathers imagined, or less?
This one, it's always like, how do I define freedom?
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's at all what the Founding Fathers imagined because, as you said earlier, there are all sorts of freedoms now assigned to people who didn't have them when the Founding Fathers, wrote the Constitution, right? So women couldn't vote, women couldn't own land, women couldn't do shit. So for them, much more free, right? Mm-hmm. But I also think the Founding Fathers could never have conceived of how many freaking people we were going to become. You don't have to circle. How many people we were going to be, and how complex our society would be, and how many rules it takes to govern us, so that we don't have complete chaos from having so many people. So in a way, there's more rules, and I guess you could say fewer freedoms, but I'm not really sure that they're important ones. I think far more important is those who gained freedoms in the last 200 years that were not initially thought about by the Founding Fathers.
Yeah, that's super important that everyone's able to have an input. Especially, I like what you were saying about they probably wouldn't have imagined how much stuff actually went down, and that they didn't know how long things would last and things like that. Because George Washington even said when political parties were forming that he didn't know if it would make a great benefit for the society as a whole.
Isn't that interesting? Okay, so I have also a Jefferson quote, but I think I'm saving it for one of your other answers. Mm-hmm. But similarly, I think that that they did kind of have an idea that things would change, but I bet they could never have guessed how much.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's see. I'm pretty sure we're on number 7. In a democracy, how much importance should be placed on civic engagement for the country to run?
I mean, this one seems incredibly important to me. You know that for many years I was a union organizer, and so I certainly saw how important it is. So in my job as a union organizer, I would do political lobbying with workers, right, to help their issues be brought into the political level or to their representatives. And I know civic engagement isn't only in politics, but I certainly saw the power of what happens when people work towards the same goal together. And I think that if we had more volunteerism and more people helping out, we would definitely be stronger communities. And I mean, there are so many different levels that's true at, from politics to homelessness.
Yeah, that definitely counts. What was I gonna say? If there was more volunteers, like you said, word would probably get out there even faster with power in numbers.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also think it wouldn't take very many of us to make really big changes. It is a little disappointing that that's not really our focus of civic engagement.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Number 8. Should the government be expected to provide more public goods like better free education, security, etc.?
Yeah, so I mean that's like so much ties into the taxation to me and would I prefer to be a socialist government? Yes, the government. I should expect that I support my government through taxes and voting, and the government supports me through making sure that I'm able to live my best life. And what I mean, and I don't just mean myself, I mean my community. And what I mean by that is you should have access to affordable housing, affordable health care, and education, right? Education shouldn't just be for the rich. And, you know, I should also expect that my government will limit overfishing or that the water I drink isn't coming out of lead pipes. I absolutely believe the government should be working for the people and the good of the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the more money that they can actually put into things that'll benefit you from taxes is more important than advertising and everything like that.
Absolutely. And then we go back to how much they spent on the defense budget, right? Or you're right, how much they spend on political campaigns.
Yeah, when it really matters about the actual candidate and what they could do for the community rather than their money.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Let's see here. I think we're on number 9. Of the two theories of democracy, elitist or pluralist, do you think the elite members of society or groups of regular individuals influence elections more?
I mean, I want, of course, to say that the individual needs to influence elections, but no, I don't believe that at all. I believe that elections are almost completely influenced by money. And in our country, money means corporations. So I believe the corporate interests in elections are what largely predicts their outcomes.
Yeah, even though people vote every single day to influence it, no matter what, the people who could pay them more is definitely going to have a better influence on things.
Yes, and it shows when even in a state like California, we would like to have better gun laws, right? But the NRA, the National Rifle Association, dumps so many millions of dollars into politics that they're able to keep those laws from being passed by influencing our politicians through campaign contributions.
Yeah, it's all about who's going to be helping another person out.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, I think we're on number 10. Do you think the founding fathers would be happy or disappointed with the government in America today? Why or why not?
This is the one where I was thinking about the Thomas Jefferson quote. I think they'd be surprised. I think they'd be surprised that we are still using their documents, largely without changes. I mean, I know we've had amendments, but that we've been largely using that document for over 200 years. But I think the surprising part would be, there's that quote that Thomas Jefferson had written in one of his papers that he thought that the Constitution and the government should be re-examined and or rewritten or something like that every 19 years. So I think he predicted that we would change a lot and that the government should change with it. And so everything should be looked at every 19 years. I think he'd be shocked to learn that we've changed very little in 200 years.
Yeah, 200 years, and I think, I could be wrong, but I think there's only 27 amendments.
Okay, so yeah, we've made very few changes, right?
Yeah, there's not that much change.
Studying amendments, and some of them I didn't even know what they were.
All right, next is number 11. A monarchy, oligarchy, or totalitarian government, which authoritarian system would you rather live in and why?
This one was super hard.
Yeah.
Because of course I would hate to live in a authoritarian system. But I'm still going to have to go with monarchy because if you just had, I mean, if I had to pick of the three, I'd go with monarchy because I feel like when you look at the history of monarchies, sometimes you got lucky and had a really cool ruler. So it might not be so bad to be under like a good and benevolent ruler.
Yeah, there's a few windows in time where there were very good rulers.
Yes. Yep.
And then others where it went sideways.
Yes, I think quite a few, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice to live under a monarchy rather than a totalitarian government.
Well, because when I think totalitarian, I think like North Korea, right?
Yeah, it's a dictator.
That would be scary. Mm-hmm.
Where their full source of power is scaring people and threatening them.
Exactly. Yes, that would be terrible. Can you imagine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then that feeds into the last question. How would you define power and what major role does it play in our government?
Yeah, this is the part where I'm of two minds. I do think, as we talked during this whole interview, that power is money, and that money is what, and by money I mean political contributions, is what is largely driving the elections and the decision making. But my years spent as a union organizer, or in my early 20s when I used to go to protests and try to get arrested, right? I do think there's power in collective action. I do think that people can work together and make a point and use their bodies to protest and affect change, since we're never going to hope to have the kind of money that the corporations have. I think collective action can also be power.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. Power in numbers seriously can have a big effect on the decisions that are made when you're especially trying to beat out a corporation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That was a great interview. For the second interview, I'll be interviewing my mom, Cynthia. Have you ever voted and why?
Well, I think that's a great question. I actually have never missed an election. I truly believe it's every citizen's duty to vote, and I believe it does matter for everyone.
That's a great answer. For question 2, would you rather live in a capitalist or socialist society?
Well, that's no question at all. I'd rather live in a socialist society. I believe that every human does have a right to an education, housing, and health care. I also believe that a system that is based on the community as a whole is much better for people than capitalism, where very few individuals receive all the wealth while others live in poverty. It just happens too much.
Fantastic answer. Question 3. What is your position on taxation?
Well, actually, taxation is great if it's used to provide basic human rights like education, housing, healthcare. If taxation should also be fairly applied, though, millionaires and corporations should have to pay the same taxes and more than a working citizen. Otherwise, our system is just failing.
Yeah, that's completely right. All right, question 4. What is more important, the rights of an individual or the good of a society?
Well, both I think are important in general, but a good society balances the needs and rights of an individual with what is good for a society.
That's completely true. All right, question 4. Do you believe the powers of Congress and the president are limited?
Well, yes, I believe so. The Constitution has checks and balances on 3 branches of government that limits the power of the Congress and president.
Yeah, they're completely necessary to make sure that no bad situations occur where power is overridden. Question 6. How much freedom is there in the government today? Is it more free than the Founding Fathers imagined or less?
The government has far more freedoms than the Founding Fathers could have ever imagined, I feel like. Women, children, and minorities have far more freedom than the Founding Fathers could have ever imagined.
Completely true. For question 7, in a democracy, how much importance should be placed on civic engagement for the country to run?
With civic engagement, I do feel it's very important for the country to run. If more citizens felt compelled to join in community involvement to improve conditions in that community or to influence politics, the way the country is being run would reflect the needs of the community is generally how I feel about that question.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely more engagement is needed in the country. For question 8, should the government be expected to provide more public goods like better free education, security, etc.?
Well, I think a mom of homeschooling children, I definitely think the government should absolutely be expected to provide education, accessing to housing. We have way too many homeless people, healthcare, clean air, clean water, and a future inhabitable planet. For the United States, a country that has more than enough resources to accomplish all that, these basic provisions make sense, I would think, for everyone and anything.
Yeah, with all the resources possible, they definitely can utilize them to better our planet. For question 9, of two theories of democracy, elitist or pluralist, do you think elite members of society or groups of regular individuals influence elections more?
Well, corporations are the elitist, right? So who have an enormous and unfair amount of influence on elections in general?
Yeah, they influence elections a lot. That's completely true. For question 10, do you think the Founding Fathers would be happy or disappointed with the government in America today? Why or why not?
I think to some extent they would be happy because they did create a formula that has been used for over 200 years. Even though there is some flaws, but I mean in every formula there's going to be checks and balances.
Yes, it's extraordinary how long the Constitution has lasted when compared to other systems in the government, in other governments. All right, let's see here. For question 11, of a monarchy, oligarchy, or totalitarian government, which authoritarian system would you rather live in and why?
That is a hard one. I wouldn't want to live under any authoritative government. If I had to choose, I guess I would choose monarchy because I have always found historical dramas like The Crown and Downton Abbey and movies about the royal family very interesting. So that would be an interesting thing to kind of do.
Yeah, that would be an interesting experience. For question 12, the last question, how would you define power and what major role does it play in our government?
Ooh, okay, tough one. Let's see. Power can be described in many ways, right? One of the ways power can be described in our government, I guess, would be the power of money, right? Far too much of our government is influenced by corporate financial influence. So I would also describe power as a collective action by citizens, and these things are not mutually exclusive. Citizens can also influence corporations by how they choose to spend their money, right? So if citizens use collective action to influence corporations, the big businesses, I feel like, would be forced to change what they influence the government to do. So that's how I would define power, I guess.
That's a great definition of power. It's completely true. Money has a lot of influence on what happens in society today. Thank you for this great interview.
You're welcome. Thanks for the questions.